We got to get it to this point, so let's get going. All right, guys, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to start on our fuselage, getting the legs on this bad boy. So let me show you here what I'm working on with my tabletop stand, because this is pretty cool. So this is from Gator Rc. You can go to flyrightrc.com and you could check out bench tops. I also use this to transport models in the trailer, but he has these cool slide jacks that go back and forth. You can turn the knob to raise or elevate if you need to, and then I put the brackets on the end so I can mount it on the trailer. But you can change heights on either end, slide these up and down, but it makes it super convenient when I have to do stuff like this. And I could just place it on there, and then I could set that subframe cradle right there where I need it to. I'll move the holder here out the way. And now we're down and we're good to start working. So let's get the gear on this thing. All right, let's get the gear on this thing. So that one's gonna go there. This one is gonna set on that way. Now, you will have 2 bags of hardware for here. Because these are M4x15 bolts that are gonna go in, you need the bigger of the 2 packets, because those actually have those things that are opened up, which is really nice. They went ahead and did that. So let me open this. And again, M4x15, but I'm going to use, I always like to bling my planes out a little bit. So I have these nice anodized cone washers. Everyone always asks, where can I get those? Amazon, eBay, whatever's cheaper for you. See how they have that opened up? They fit right there on the inside. So if I pop this one off, these 2 are going to go here and one there, and they're going to face in on both sides. So we want to go ahead and put those in, and as always, we are going to use some blue Loctite on the thread, so we only ever have to do this one time. All right, if you've ever had issues with your wheels or tires falling off in flight, we are going to fix that right now. This is the step we've gotten our wheel pants put on our model. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take our axle, as I've already done here, and we make a flat spot. Now we're going to take our first wheel collar. Now this one, if you choose to put Loctite, canopy glue, whatever on it, doesn't matter. The instruction manual wants us to leave a little bit of space, but this one, if it came loose, doesn't matter at all. So I use that grub to line up the mark on my axle, and we make that nice and tight. I choose not to use Loctite on this stuff because it tends to be really tough on those grub screws over time. So what I'm going to do now is I take a little bit of this canopy glue. This is Zap canopy glue, and get it out here on the end. And if you give this the night to set up, it doesn't take a whole lot, guys. Just like that. Now we're going to take our wheel collar and we're going to slide that on, and I'm going to make sure I work it around on that inside. Now this stuff will get rubbery, and that will prevent it from wanting to come loose, and also when it dries, it'll prevent it from wanting to slide off that axle altogether. So from here, now I can just tighten it up. If you want to use something on your grub screws, use a little bit of that canopy glue on there. I can get my tool out like that. All right, and just let that stuff dry. It'll dry on there nice and clear, and now there's no way that's coming off. If you want it to come off, a little bit of alcohol will serve that well, and then you'll be able to work it off. Now we're just going to go ahead and slide in that whole assembly. Drop it in. Slide that into the gear, and it's going to be kind of a tight fit to work with, but we can manage. Slide in the washer and the nut. Now you're going to need 2 wrenches for this. One to hold the axle, and then the other one to tighten the nut. They say in the book these are 13.5 inches. Seems to fit really well. And just make sure that your grub screw faces out, so that way you can get to it if you ever have to work on that. All right, in the book they call for M4s here. They are not, they're M3s. I am opting to use flush mount hex heads, or the countersunk hex heads. They're stainless with these rubber backed washers, just because this thing's going to have a lot of flying guide wires on it, and there's going to be some tension on this fiberglass. So I want to make sure it ain't going to come loose, number one. But two, I want to have a good like sized washer for a backing that's going to have a little bit of give to it and cushion. So I think these rubber washers will be the perfect fit here. And then we'll just go ahead and we'll tighten these up. Again, using one of these hex drill bits because it's easier with the point to be able to push. I got all kinds of stuff falling in the background. So we're going to install the 2 elevator and the rudder servos now. You can just take those. Look how easy that is doing that. What a trick. What a trick. All right, let's do the others and we'll get them mounted. Now when we install these, it's going to be important that you look at the orientation of the arms. Uh-oh. They don't fit. Great Scott, now what are we going to do? I guess we got to send the plane back. Or we take a file and we get the filing. So let's see what we got to do here. So take that. Calling turkeys, ready? All right, got a good bit to take off. Let's get to it. All right, let's try this again. Now, as I was saying, as we put those things in there, you want to make sure that all your arms are on or in the correct orientation, which in this case is away from those squares. And that's because all your push rods and everything else going back to your control surfaces were given to you at a set length. If you take that and put that there, it makes a huge difference. So now that you have those installed, we're going to do the same thing that we did for the ailerons. We're going to go ahead and drill all those holes. And we are going to then wick some CA into them. And then we're going to put our screws in there. All right, it's time to keep rocking with the Gilmore. So first things first, I'm not going to install the fuel system now because I don't want to be dealing with all the hoses, drilling, tank in the way, possibly cutting or nicking. I don't want any of that stuff in my way. So right now, fuel tray, we don't need that. We don't need the tank. You will need your template, which is marked out for whatever engine you are going to use, your standoffs, the pack of electric adaptation we don't need, and we are going with the Stinger 35 in this one. So my first Stinger engine, can't wait to see really what's in the box. We've opened it, but we haven't opened it. So let's take a look. This thing, we're going to get the cowl off there, so let's do that now and get that out of the way. And this is our cowl ring. We don't need that right at the moment either. All right, guys, let's go ahead and unbox the Stinger 35 for this aircraft. So some of the, if you will, standout features for this are going to be a Walbro carb. We have electronic ignition, obviously. CM6, typical NGK spark plug setup. The smallest gas engine I've ever put in anything is a DA50. So I'm kind of very excited to see what we got here. Walbro carbs have been the standard for absolutely forever on these things. Here you can see your spark pickup, so your Hall sensor. Hall effect sensor in the front, but standard, looks good. As far as a machine quality, no plug in there right now. Sounds like we got some good compression going on. You could see the ring there on the inside. Sounds good, looks good. Comes with the 4 bolts in the front for the prop. Let's look at the electronic ignition. I don't know really what else you're going to take a look at here and show people that's going to be, well, I'm going to buy it. Based on what I see, it's all going to be about the way it runs, right? So just kind of giving you an idea what's in the bag. So we have a couple of the connector clips, which are very important. Your electronic ignition. Take off the rubber band. Your boot. If you guys follow along with the videos, I greatly appreciate it, but we show you all kinds of cool things along the way. So like one of them is to use a little bit of dielectric grease on the inside of those boots when you put them on so it doesn't heat weld itself to your spark plug and it makes it really easy to get off. Also is dielectric grease is a electrical isolator, so it helps to prevent that high voltage leakage around the spark plug, so that way we have less interference issues. Standard working voltage listed on the ignition is 7 to 14 volts for this. So we are going to have 2 leads for a battery in, your Hall sensor, and it looks like we have a tack pickup. So I'll be curious to see how this works out with our Free Sky setup so we can get some telemetry. I like telemetry if nothing more than just another gadget to use, a weapon in our arsenal, but it helps with tuning if you'd really like to see what goes on there. As far as the muffler goes, gonna have a piece of silicone tubing. It's cool to give you a little clamp. This thing's really light. Honestly, it weighs nothing. We'll wait to put that on and then put the clamp on later. But that's light aluminum or that white metal kind of stuff. So very light. And then we have a hardware set that comes with this with standoffs. If you guys ever suffered, and I'll give you my trick for this. There are a ton of people with a ton of different ways that secure mufflers onto their engines. We'll cover this during the install. I don't use Nordlock washers, and my method is actually pretty simple. I typically do not use the gaskets that are in there. I'll clean all of this off with brake clean. I'll clean that off with brake clean. I'll use a very thin layer of high temp silicone, so that way the gaskets, they compress over time and get hard, so then that expansion isn't there and bolts come loose. So that's why I prefer the red RTV. But right out of the gate, when I'm going together for the last time, clean it with brake clean, thin layer RTV, put it in there, and then on your, so like these gaskets, we don't use those. I'll save it in case I ever need it in a pinch. But one of the things that I will do with, and we can pull those out here, looks like they actually give you another exhaust gasket, and this one's that high temp material. Still won't use it, but on the bolts themselves, we'll put a little bit of red RTV on the threads, not Loctite, red RTV, high temp exhaust RTV, and then we will put a bunch around the head of the bolt with a standard lock washer. And then when we put it in there, we'll dab in some of that high temp silicone. So what's going to happen is that bolt's going to go in and the silicone's going to kind of gather around the head, and it's on the threads and it's in here. And if you let that sit without getting it greasy or grimy overnight or 2 days or a week or whatever it is before you fire this up for the first time, that silicone will harden and encapsulate everything, but it's rubbery, so it's a vibration isolator. So that stuff won't come loose. I can't tell you the last time I had an exhaust come off of anything. So exhaust, we can obviously mount it regular, inverted, whatever it is that you want to do. This one is a side 35cc engine. So I'm kind of excited. We do have high and low screws. We have a throttle idle adjustment screw. I'm not a fan of those. I take them out. I let all of that onto the servo because if you should happen to lose a linkage, it's going to fall back to idle. I don't want it to fall back to idle. If I have a failure, I want that engine off. So I typically take out the throttle stop screws out of those and pitch them. I throw them away. And then we have an arm here on the right-hand side of the engine for your choke. And then we have another one for a throttle plate. I think I did see here in the package, maybe not. I thought I saw a longer arm. Yep, there it is. So in this pack, so there we have standoffs. Maybe 3-inch standoffs come in that thing. But we also had a set of standoffs with the model, which is nice. We'll have an extra set. So in here is that gasket I was talking about. That's a typical exhaust gasket. We have our CM6 plug. And then we have a longer throttle arm. So we'll talk about throttle linkage a lot when we do the engine setup. So I hope you guys are around for that. Common questions we see across the internet on proper setups of these things. Maybe I can give you some information that would help you, but it looks like we can pop that screw out and put in a longer throttle arm. So there you go. There is the Stinger 35, obviously available over at www.gator-rc.com. They have all kinds of Stinger engines there on hand. So can't wait to see how this thing flies, performs, starts, and our telemetry. But that's the wrap up of this engine. Let's get into installing it and grabbing our arm back out of the box. All right, we're gonna have to address the elephant in the room here. Off camera, there's a little bit that's happened. So I always like to throw a prop on the center of this just to see how it looked. And the center point of the engine was really far over here, and I don't know how that happens when you use a template, but I think we figured it out. So let me take this off. See how nice that is when you use the fly right bench stand with those jacks? You can go ahead and lift up the back end of that thing and level this all out, make it easy to look at. But anyway, you're going to notice I had to, and I only have 2 standoffs in here right now. So this whole video clip is in front of the engine install portion. So understand, I need you to look at something before you follow the engine install and know that I needed to make a change here. So we use this template right here, and it only fits on one way. They have the shelf on here, it goes over the engine firewall like that. But I want you to notice that the printing here is backwards. And I noticed it before and I didn't think much of it. But there's something here in the whole lasering portion of this that's transposed. And I really don't know what it is, but it means that all your marks are going to be off, because I put this on here and I lined up the circle so everything was right, and we're off a little bit. So what I wound up doing is actually turning this thing around this way, and there is reference marks in the circle on this stuff and here, and I had to line those up, and I used the same exact marks I used for the Stinger 35, which winds up being the same as the DLE 30. All right, but it went on this way. And you can see that that shifted all my holes over, probably, if I had to guess, 1/2 inch. And that means with the right thrust that's built in here, it now shifts that center point back into the center of the cowling now, which is where it should be. Before, you imagine 1/2 inch, the thing's over here, and it looked really bad. So there was obviously something going on there, and that's it. So do yourself a favor. If yours is backwards, you're going to have to be still that same print on the same side, but you're going to have to go this way. Use those reference marks, clamp it to the firewall, and drill your holes. That should get you where you need to be. Now, into the normal install portion, and I guess now I got to show you guys how to plug up firewall holes if you want to. Do I really think you have to in this case? No. I really don't think you do, but I probably will for the sake of video and learning. But we're going to have to carve out more of this now for that choke arm and the fuel line. So it is what it is. Back to work. All right, we have to figure out what marks we want to use on our motor template. So this thing will sit right on the firewall. That way I'll show you that in a minute. So I found out that if I use the little triangle, that's the DLE 30 or GT 33, the triangles. And I put my standoffs on here just to make sure that those are going to fit appropriately. And if I cover over those triangles, right on the money. So there's my pattern. So let's take a look at what that would look like on the front of this plane. So right there, we're just going to take this thing, we're going to place that right over the front of the firewall box, and I am going to go ahead and drill out those triangles, and then that will give me the points at which I am going to mount this way. Once we're done with that, and it's held into place, we're going to get it mounted, and then I'm going to measure the distance recommendation from the firewall to the prop drive before the washer, make sure that that's right, and see if we have to shim this thing out or not. They already have right thrust built into the motor box, so we don't need to accommodate for that. All right, now per the instructions, they're going to want you to put blind nuts in the backside. If you want to do that, you can. With gas engines, I am not a believer at all in blind nuts. I think they cause lots of issues and things come loose. On the backside, use the biggest fender washer that you could possibly get back there. So we're going to take this thing, we're going to fish that through all of those. We're going to put a large fender washer on the back side. And then we're going to use lock nuts. And I have never had a problem with that method. I have used blind nuts and had them fall off. So that's why I believe in that. So let's tighten it up and let's measure. All right, so here's what we have. The measurement with the handy dandy, you guys love to comment on my Mickey ruler that goes way back to the 80s. We are at 155, so we're about 5 millimeters short of the measurement. With this fly, absolutely this would work, and I'm okay with it. The choke arm does rub up here on the G material, so we still have to carve that out regardless, but I do have longer 5 millimeter bolts, so I'm actually using the 5x100s that I have, and I'm going to put a washer or two in there, and that's going to help to slide me out to be exactly where I want it to be. And that'll give me a little extra on those bolts anyway to have nuts and to be able to grab on there. So I like that, and I'm going to make the change. I'm going to actually probably carve this out a while and mark it where I have to carve it out, then carve it out, get the engine out of here, and get this thing ready for final install. Let's do it. All right, to deal with these holes, if we have the appropriate size dowel rod to push right in there, that's awesome. If you do not, and all you have is something bigger, that's fine. Just drill the hole for something bigger, and then we can make that work. But you want to drill the hole to then match the size of the dowel rod you have. Luckily, I have some of the appropriate size. So I've cut myself some small plugs that will be the same thickness as my firewall right there. We're going to apply some epoxy to those, and we're going to tap those things in until they're nice and flush. If they're a little long, that's fine. You can always sand them off. And now your plug will not only be filled, but it'll also be sealed because of the epoxy. So make sure you get just a little bit on that end. There you have it. Little epoxy over the ends. We're all sealed up and ready to use our perfect holes. If you have an area of a firewall that you need to reseal or just seal off so that way it doesn't get fuel soaked, we're going to just go ahead and take some quick epoxy and we're going to squeeze in 2 parts of this stuff. There's part 1. And again, equal parts. And then we're just going to go ahead and mix this up. Get the sides scraped up good so that way we know that it's mixed. And we don't really need more than just a drop or 2 of just regular rubbing alcohol. 70% works fine. And all we're going to do is just use this to thin it out. So you should have some really kind of paint-like texture. All right, once we have that, we're going to go ahead and take an acid brush. I'm going to get this thing all worked over in there. And just paint any of those surfaces that you drilled or ground out. And then within, I don't know, it takes a little bit longer this way, but let's just say half an hour, everything there should be fully cured. If you have areas like where I ran linkage holes or fuel lines, you can just go ahead and take that stuff and rub it around in there. And that's how we seal off our firewall. And there you have it. That's a wrap of this section of the builder assembly of the Seagull Models Gilmore Redline. If this model interests you, do me a favor, head on over to www.gator-rc.com. You could find this model there, and maybe if this isn't your cup of tea, you could check out the full line of other products they have from Top RC Model, obviously Seagull's Models, and Sebart, or many others, as they are a full one-stop hobby shop for all your engines, transmitters, radios, motors, servos, everything you can imagine you will find there. So, obviously, a link down in the description below, you'll find all of the listings there of all of the products that we are using on the inside of this build. I appreciate you guys watching and following along. Smash that thumbs up. It helps us a lot. Like, share, subscribe, all that happy jazz. And don't forget to smash that like button. Head on over to Facebook and check out the Just Plain Crazy as well as the Gator RC Facebook pages. As well as YouTube and Instagram and TikTok for just the Just Plain Crazy side of things. But that being said, I appreciate all of you guys watching. I will wish each one of you happy flights. Peace out.